Alright, so guys, I stumbled across this excellent article here in China that really talks about JAC and NIO, this whole split up, what's going on, the very deep information. There's so much information in this video. Holy moly macaroni, and it's just very deep stuff. So I'm going to be reading out everything. It's in Chinese. I've translated it into English, and just sit back and enjoy the listen, all right? There's many different parts to this article. We're going to go through all of them, all right? The title of the article, JAC sold to NIO Foundry. Where did it come from? The road to foundry manufacturing for new energy vehicle companies are all staged. The OEM has its own vehicle brand, so it is difficult to completely isolate conflicts of interest. On October 19th, Jianghuai Automobile issued an announcement announcing the transfer of assets of two factories, passenger car company number 3 factory and Signup factory. JAC internally calls them NIO F1 factory and NIO F2 factory, both of which are used for OEM production for NIO. The transfer plan has been discussed a lot and will not be elaborated. So to put it simply, divided into 3 asset packages, the total net book value is more than 4.2 billion yuan and the transfer price is 4.49 billion yuan. NIO President Qin Li said the move will not affect the company's operations. In December 2022, JAC announced that it planned to acquire the construction in progress equipment related assets held by Anhui NIO at the transaction price of 1.704 billion yuan. There has been a lot of speculation that the different interpretations of the purpose of the two transactions between the two parties. Some people say that NIO plans to enter the European market, but because the OEM receives government subsidies, NIO needs to clarify itself first. There are also rumors that the Ministry of Industry and Information Technology will change the OEM policy to dual qualification. That is, both the OEM and the client must have production qualifications. These two statements have many flaws and are all of little value for discussion. The reason for the separation of the two parties is that both parties are listed companies and involves changes in major operational projects. That is, the future of cooperation between the two parties. They will be disclosed, but they need to wait until the negotiations are finalized. Now is only the immediate stage of the transaction. The content of the negotiations between the two parties cannot be seen by the outside world, so it is difficult to make accurate judgments. However, there are a few facts that can be sorted out to give some clues, and these are very important facts, and this is why I'm sharing this article. Fact number 1, regarding foundry capacity utilization. The F1 factory was signed and started construction in 2016. It has designated annual production capacity of 50,000 vehicles. It initially mainly produced ES8 and ES6. Later, the production line was expanded and double shift system can produce 240,000 vehicles per year. The maximum production capacity is 300,000. Obviously, the capacity utilization rate of this part is only about 50% because NIO sold 122,500 vehicles in 2022 and 110,000 vehicles from January to September 2023. The F2 plant, Signup plant, was constructed in 2021 with a planned production capacity of 1 million vehicles and a battery production capacity of 100 gigawatt hours. It will be put into production in September 2022 with a first phase production capacity of 600,000 vehicles. The utilization rate of this part of the production capacity is very low, and some people speculate that it is less than 10%. Ignoring the allocation between the two plants, if the annual sales are 150,000 vehicles, the two plants combined have a production capacity of 840,000 vehicles and a utilization rate of 17.8%, which is indeed very low. As a result, it should be difficult to launch the second phase. Fact 2, regarding how much benefit JAC has gained from the cooperation between the two parties. NIO has 7 or 8 models, and many of its SKUs are difficult to count, can be customized. Combined with production capacity utilization, it is difficult for JAC to make money. According to NIO's annual report, in the 5 years from 2018 to 2022, NIO paid a total of 3 billion yuan in fees, not just OEM fees. There is a safety clause in the agreement between the two parties. Even if a car is not sold, NIO will have to pay JAC 200 million yuan. but this clause only applies in the early stages, 2018. During the same period, JAC received 6.905 billion yuan in government subsidies. The amount of subsidies this year has been greatly reduced, only 158 million yuan in the first 8 months. These subsidies are provided for the production of new energy vehicle products and are divided into 3 parts: JAC's own brand, JAC Volkswagen, and JAC NIO OEM parts. Government subsidies are about to be withdrawn, which will inevitably worsen JAC's finances. JAC's financial report shows that the net profit in 2020 is still 120 million yuan, and in 2022 it will be negative 1.582 billion yuan. Considering the heavy assets JAC invested in foundry production capacity, JAC failed to gain much net benefit from the cooperation. No one will sell a profitable store, and JAC's listing for transfer illustrates this point. Fact 3. JAC's attitude towards the cooperation. In 2017, JAC Volkswagen was established. At the end of 2020, Volkswagen increased its stake in the joint venture to 75%. At the beginning of this year, a third party, China Construction Group, revealed on its official website that it was undertaking the EPC project of the new energy vehicle intelligent industrial park in Feixi, Anhui. This project is used by JAC to manufacture high-end smart electric vehicles for Huawei. The first product may be a high-end MPV. The cooperation between JAC and Huawei will be traced back to 2021. Jianghuai is a strategy that promotes multiple routes and multiple customers at the same time, and now it needs to make a choice. This kind of listed auction is usually negotiated offline first, and the purchase conditions are also tailor-made for NIO. The key is that no choice and must take over. Otherwise, the NIO brand will not have corresponding production capacity. This may be the reason why JAC divided the F1 factory into 2 asset packages. Compared with NIO, JAC seems to have a better choice. In fact, JAC can choose who to OEM for. As for whether to continue taking the OEM route, NIO cannot choose. The factory has already made the choices for it. The reason is that the sale of its own new energy passenger car brand, Yttrium Way, are sluggish, and that the hope of success is dwindling. Based on these 3 points, it is inevitable for both parties to break up. The 3 states of OEM by these new energy vehicle companies, if things develop along this trend, NIO Li Auto XPeng will actually end OEM. Since XPeng obtained the production qualification in Zhaoqing, Guangdong in 2021, the OEM agreement between the 2 parties was terminated at the end of that year. Li Auto briefly used Li Fan as an OEM, but soon obtained production qualifications. NIO's decision to abandon OEM, whether proactively or passively, is now seen as the necessary step. The OEM contract between the 2 parties currently extended to May 2024. In addition, Leap Motor obtained production qualifications through the acquisition of Xinfuda. Marginalized Aiways, Tianji, and Weltmeister all obtained production qualifications through acquisition of production plants. The new powerful brands OEMing Hi-Fi, substantially OEMed by Hyundai. Light Orange Era is OEMed by BAIC Racing. Jishi Auto is OEMed by BAIC, and Binli Auto is rumored to be OEMed by Dongfeng. Arcfox is OEMed by Magna, while Xiaomi is said to be OEM by BAIC and Brilliance. Why do most OEMs not go far? If we look at the development of new energy vehicle makers and IT companies in car manufacturing, OEM is equivalent to power training in the early stages. Qualifications are not only part of the reason. The key point is that the vehicle production line involves heavy asset investment and management and supply chain management, and there is no accumulation of these with new energy vehicle makers. The initial cooperation between client and OEM is usually smooth. The former requires experience packages, while the latter requires OEM fees. The boundaries of responsibilities and rights are very clear, and then the problem arises. There are 2 situations. If the sales are not good, the expected sales volume is not reached, and the OEM party invested a lot of assets but did not get the expected return, the OEM party may be dissatisfied. Most OEM businesses may have a negative impact on their own brand. Consumers will think that the workload of the OEM is not full and there is a problem with their own brand production, so they choose to OEM for others. This cannot be said to be a stereotype because many times it is true. If it sells well, scales up, and reaches a certain sales threshold for the client, the cost of manufacturing a simple vehicle may exceed the cost of a single vehicle self-built production capacity, including amortization, fixed investment, meaning it's cheaper to build it yourself. This will allow principals to seek to build their own production capacity. In fact, this idea usually arises earlier than this point, because after all, commissions and OEMs are two interested parties. If you don't take production into your own hands, it will definitely not be practical. Not only do you have different bedfellows sooner or later, but they're also distant from the beginning. The reason is simple. The OEM has its own vehicle brand, so it is difficult to completely isolate conflicts of interest. There are unconfirmed reports that NIO is building its own third factory in Hefei to produce sub-brand Alps products. NIO's fourth factory is located in Chuzhou, Anhui. It is said to be renovated from the Cheetah automobile factory and put into production of another sub-brand, Firefly, although neither of these two news has been officially announced. Jianhua definitely knows the truth, and both parties are actively preparing for a future without each other. There is no reason then that there is a structural conflict between the client and the OEM. Unless there's a die-hard OEM like Magna, it seems that not competing with customers is the key to long-term success of the OEM business. Here, the so-called not grabbing food, using protocols, swearing, or taking other more decisive isolation measures are not as good as safety statement in terms of capabilities. That is, the OEM does not own its own vehicle brand, which does not reassure the client. Man, that was quite a mouthful. I hope you guys learned something from this article. Listen to it again if you have to. Yeah, to sum things up, I guess it's just like the utilization rate is quite low, so JAC doesn't earn as much money as they wanted. But also at the same time, even if they produce a lot of cars, NIO has to pay more for it. So it's kind of becoming a situation where JAC doesn't really want to work with NIO anymore. It seems like that. And then with NIO, they still have to pay even if they don't produce that many cars because it's just part of the contract. All right, my son woke up. As always, stay safe, stay healthy. Peace out.